G'day, guys. Today, I'm going to be talking about ways and strategies that you can follow so that you can essentially boost your immune system. Being that these are obviously very short webinars, I'm not going to be able to cover some of them in detail as much as I would like to today. However, hopefully this will give you a good starting point so that if you are interested in, essentially increasing your immune system from a positive point of view, you'll know where to kind of look into yourself. So what I'm going to cover is the basics of immune system function and how it can be supported. The role of nutrition in immune system health, including key vitamins and minerals. So we'll have a look at some of the major vitamins and minerals that have been known to increase our immune system, and also if we're not getting them, take away from our immune system. We're going to talk about a little bit about lifestyle factors that can impact immune system function, such as things like stress and sleep, which are things that you'd probably understand already that are pretty big contributors to a positive immune system or a negative immune system. All right. We're not going to talk too much about natural remedies and supplements today because we're probably not going to have enough time. And same with the last one. But we're going to get really stuck into those first 3 points because they're the most vital. Okay. So the basics of the immune system, right? Now, there's some ways that we could go about this, and some of them are very confusing. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep it pretty simple so you can understand it, right? And so I can articulate it correctly. So the immune system is a complex network of cells, tissues, and organs that work together to defend the body against harmful pathogens such as bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Now, put simply, our body is a viral and fighting machine against infections, right? And when we have everything working well, we fight off infections better. When we don't fight them off as well, right? So the general way we're going to be talking about immune system today is that certain things are going to affect us positively when it comes to our immune system, and certain things are going to take away from our body's ability to fight off infection, right? So as you can see here in this point number 2, several factors can influence the effectiveness of the immune system. So these include things like age, nutrition, sleep, stress, exercise, and pre-existing health conditions. Now, those things there, age, nutrition, sleep, stress, exercise, and pre-existing health conditions, they're pretty much the crux of this, right? Like, now there's no point talking too much about age or pre-existing health conditions because potentially, especially with the first one, there's not a lot we can do about changing your age, is there, right? So it's not really in our control. Therefore, we're not going to put a lot of time and energy into that one. But nutrition, sleep, stress, and exercise are 100% in our control. Okay. And these are the ones that we're going to talk about because we can influence them. And there's certain fundamentals and rules that we need to understand. And if we understand those, you're going to have a thriving immune system. And at the end of the day, that's what we want, right? Like, we want to be able to do more. We want to be able to live life to the fullest. And to do that, we don't want to be sick. We don't want to be feeling shit, to put it bluntly. We want to be feeling good and full of energy. And that comes from those things. It comes from those basics. Okay. Now, I put in here the role of nutrition in the immune system because I want to talk about nutrition and how it affects the immune system. You can look at this 2 ways, right? You can really look at this from your immune system is going to be improved by what you put in your body. I kind of like to think of it the opposite way. Your immune system is going to be affected of what you don't put in your body. Okay. The reason I like to think about it like that is there's no food that's just going to fix us, right? There's no food, like there's no vitamin C tablet that's going to go, boom, you're feeling perfect now, right? It's more about understanding that we need lots and lots of vitamins and minerals. We need lots of different types of calories, lots of types of different fruits and veg in our body. And deficiencies of certain things can weaken our immune system. So a lot of the ones that you see here, such as like vitamin C, which comes in a lot of things like berries and fruits, that's the one that, we give the most credit to. And obviously it's very important, but it's usually the easiest to get if you're eating a really well balanced diet. Then you have things like vitamin D, which is about getting out in the sunshine, which kind of goes into what we're saying before about like just lowering stress, right? Then you've got other things here that don't get talked about as much, such as like vitamin E, zinc, selenium, iron, antioxidants, protein, omega-3, probiotics, and gut health. it's hard to go into all of these in 10 minutes, right? So what I want you to understand is that in general, these is a supplementation. A lot of the time is a patch job for food that you're not putting into your body. Now it's like, okay, there's so many things here. How do I get them all in, Ethan? It's a good question. And the simplest answer, and there is no perfect answer here, the simplest answer is to be eating lots and lots of variety of food. Lots of variety. And when I'm talking about variety here, I'm talking variety of vegetables and fruits. And that can sound really overwhelming because it's like, how do I get so many different vitamins and minerals into my body, especially with fruit and veg, because it can be very time consuming to cook. And that's when you can look for like, even if you're at the supermarket, you can look for like buying different bags of salad mix. So one day you might do a kale slaw. Then the next day you're doing like a four leaf mix. You might even blend the four leaf mix with the kale slaw. All of a sudden you're getting these different vitamins and minerals into your body. You know, you might be playing around with different meats. You might go meat one day, tofu the next day, chicken. You might go beef. Like you might be throwing four bean mix in. It's about being intentional with your variety and not getting stuck to the same thing. Because, like I'm saying before, it's not necessarily what you put into your body that necessarily fixes you. It's what you're missing from your body that can cause problems. So if we get stuck, you know, eating the same bad food, quote unquote bad food every day, or we get stuck eating the same good food every day, we're not giving our body the vitamins and minerals it needs to fight off infection. And the easiest way to kind of fix that is to just think rainbow, to think different, to think variety, um, and don't lock into the same thing every single day. So if you, and on this as well, there's some other little factors in here which I haven't spoken about. Things like, you know, if you're in a really heavy calorie deficiency, so you're not eating a lot of calories every day, that can also take away from your immune system. If you're putting bad food, so you know, like very high fat, saturated fats, like you know, having pizza and you know, McDonald's and things like that, you can cause your immune system to fight off, to work harder, right? Because what we're doing is we're throwing in some potentially unhelpful vitamins and minerals, you could say, or unhelpful foods are probably a better way of putting it. And because of that, our body needs to start working harder in other areas. And it's just this big game, right? Like there's no perfect food there's no bad food necessarily that's going to make us sick. And there's no good food that's going to fix us. It's a series of choices, series of options, and how many we, I guess, win each day is how well it's going to affect us. But in general, to summarize, variety as often as possible when appropriate. And you'll find that if you focus on that, then you won't need to focus too much on what I've got on the screen. Now, where these supplementation comes in is when you're not hitting that through your daily food, right? So let's say you have been playing around with variety, you are eating a lot of whole foods, putting a lot of awesome nutrition into your body, and then you start to have maybe a deficiency in vitamin C. Okay, cool. That might be appropriate to have a vitamin C tablet. Then you might go down the path of, you know, same with like vitamin D. If you're not getting out and it's too hard to get out in the sun all the time, then you might go looking down a vitamin D tablet. I would, if you're having intolerances though, or you're having anything that you're struggling with from like a vitamin point of view, it is important that you consult a dietitian. This is where they can be really helpful when it comes to things like this, especially. So that is something to look into as well. But in general, like I'm saying before, variety as often as possible, and you pretty much win this game. Ooh, what have I done here? I have got myself on a drawing somehow. What am I? There we go. Cool. All right. So this next one, I'm going to pull us out of here just so I can show you this slide properly. So we're going to talk about lifestyle factors that can impact immune system function, such as stress management and sleep. So we'll just jump in here so we can talk about the first few. So the first thing I want you to focus that I want to talk about, sorry, is stress. Now I know there's a lot of stuff on the screen, but don't worry too much about that. That's more for me than you. So stress, there's two ways of looking at it. We have stress that's acute and stress that's chronic. In other words, we have stress that can happen in one big hit, such as, you know, grief, or we can have stress as being very busy every day and not having time to ourselves, right? So we have a large amount of stress and we have a small amount of stress. That's constant. Both of these can affect our immune system, right? Because they are stress. I tend to see, I guess, more people that get sick from chronic stress, so regular stress over long periods of time, rather than stress, sickness from just one thing happening. Okay. And also, a lot of the time, acute stresses happen because something's happened and we can't, it's a bit out of our control, versus chronic stress kind of falls into that day-to-day thing, which is more about what we can control. And that's why we really want to focus on the things that we can control. All right. Now, I'm someone who's really big on, for me personally, I love tracking my heart rate. I love tracking my stress, because for me, it's like little markers, right? It's things that I can control and things that I can look to as guidance. So things that I see from within myself and with my clients is that I will wake up in the morning and I'll notice my heart rate is higher. My resting heart rate every morning is higher on the days that I had stress the day prior, which for me is an indicator that I maybe didn't have enough rest on that day, or that I was overly stressed about something in work when maybe I didn't need to be. But this heart rate variability can be an interesting marker of stress. The other thing with stress is you have different types of stress too, right? Like we have healthy stress that can also be unhealthy, which I'll talk about in a second. And then we have unhealthy stress. Healthy stress, an example of healthy stress is the stress that we put on our body when we exercise, right? So if we go for a 3K run, never been for a 3K run before, probably be okay, right? We'll probably adapt. Maybe the next week we'll go for a 3K run, we might be 1% better, right? That's an example of healthy stress. Now, where you can turn healthy stress into an unhealthy stress is when you did something like this. I've never run before. I'm going to run 30 kilometers or 20, whatever it is that's around that mark, right? What you've done is you've overloaded your body in a way that your body is unable to adapt to it positively. And because of that, you've now turned this healthy stimulus into a stressful stimulus, which we cannot adapt from, causing us to get sick. Now, what this is a lot of the time happens when people are new to exercise because, well, they don't exercise, then they jump into 3 times a week. They're doing all these other things mixed in with the calorie deficit. All of a sudden, they're sick. So this is an example of how healthy stress can be, unhealthy too. It's the same with cold therapy, heat therapy. A lot of those things that are good for you in small quantities over time with healthy progression, they are fantastic. In large quantities and in an acute setting when you're not used to it, can cause our body to struggle a little bit. So this is kind of an example of how we have healthy stress versus unhealthy stress. Now, the biggest one, which is the one that everyone understands, everyone knows, is sleep quality and duration. The thing is like, it's very easy to say to sleep more, but it's like, how do we actually do that? I think before we talk about that, it's important to understand that out of everything we could talk about, I'd say that sleep's probably the number one that's going to help your immune system. Okay. So you can eat well and you can drink a lot of water, you can keep your stress low and you can get crappy sleep and you're going to feel like crap, right? So if you take that one out of the equation, it's going to be really hard to recover and it's going to be really hard to have a really thriving immune system. So the thing that I would recommend here is there's a few things, but I find that the things that work really well for my clients are things like creating a regular routine. So having the similar time you go to sleep each night, especially Monday to Friday, and then having a similar time you wake up Monday to Friday will help your body tell you when to be tired and help your body tell you when you need to be alert. That is a really easy one. The next one would be things like caffeine consumption. So on the days that you have caffeine, you're going to be putting your body under more stress, which is fine. So cut it out at a certain time period. I think they say 12 for males and 2 for females. Could be wrong on that, quote unquote. However, I follow that rule myself where I don't have caffeine after 12 o'clock. Sometimes when I'm naughty, I might stretch to 1 o'clock. But that works really well for me. Coming back to what I was saying again about heart rate variability as well, if I have caffeine after around that 2 or 3 o'clock mark, I'll actually see that my resting heart rate the next morning when I wake up is slightly elevated compared to a morning when I don't do that. So it is an example of how it does affect stress. The other thing with that is like another thing that I notice for myself and clients is that When you aren't getting a good sleep, your heart rate is also slightly higher the morning of that wake up too. So if I was to have 8 hours and I was to have 4 hours, which today I had 4 hours, not a good sleep, I woke up with a resting heart rate of 46 this morning. And yesterday I woke up with a resting heart rate of 40. So 6 beats per minute difference based off how much sleep quality I had. This, you don't need to go into this much detail. The thing that I'm trying to explain to you is that it's an example of how sleep affects this heart rate, which is a sign of stress. So it is really interesting to see how all these different things work together, right? Now, the other stuff that I have in here is going to be things that we're not really going to talk about, but we have physical activity. So if you're someone who's more healthy, you're someone who exercises regularly, you're going to have a highest chance of fighting off infection. Someone who's not, vice versa, right? Smoking and alcohol consumption, pretty much, to put it bluntly, it really messes with you. Like it really does. There's no way around this. Like I'm not saying you can't be a thriving human and smoke and have alcohol. You can for sure. There's people who've been doing it for years, but the level of efficiency you could have in your immune system if you weren't doing these things makes a big difference. Smoking, especially, alcohol tends to affect you still. Even 1 glass, 2 glass, it can affect your immune system quite heavily. It can affect your sleep, which then affects your immune system. General recommendations here is not to have more than 2 to 3 glasses of wine, for example, 2 to 3 servings. But honestly, I'm actually not an expert when it comes to that, so I'm not going to sit here and say what you should and shouldn't drink. I'm just more from a stress point of view. Alcohol and smoking, they're gonna do a lot worse than getting 6 hours versus 7 hours. That's for sure. Social connections and environmental factors are two other things that we're not going to talk about, but are things that are important to take into the equation of immune system development, right? The more positive connections, the more lower stress you're going to have. So it all ties in and it all affects your immune system. So, look, I know there's a bit I've just covered there. Probably the biggest takeaways is eat the rainbow as often as you can. Don't get too fixated on cure foods. What I mean by that is like things like having flax seeds because of their benefits, right? Or you heard someone have chia seeds because of their benefits. Like those are all helpful things. Two of things I have every morning, but your your highest reward is going to come from your biggest amount of variety through your whole foods. The next one, when it comes to other factors, is going to be things like sleep. So if you can get your sleep right, you can get your nutrition right, you're on the way to a really, really thriving immune system. So yeah, that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this very, very short webinar on boosting your immune system strategies for staying healthy. If I can work out how to stop recording. Thank you.